A secret shattered their bond forever. Jungkook breaks his silence about the night that changed everything between him and Taehyung. Don't lie to me, Taehyung! Was it you who locked the door? The question ripped through the cold silence like glass shattering on tile. Jungkook's voice trembled not with fear, but with rage barely contained beneath the surface of his breathless, sweat-slicked body. His fist, still bruised from breaking the window just moments earlier, dripped blood onto the scorched carpet of room 407. The sirens wailed outside like ghosts mourning the past. Smoke curled into the night, wrapping the hotel rooftop in a choking embrace as the fire crew battled to control what was left of the second floor. The scent of burning fabric and melted plastic still clung to Jungkook's hoodie. Taehyung didn't answer. He stood there, soaked from the emergency sprinkler system, his eyes wide, blinking under the harsh flashing lights. It had been 5 minutes since they escaped. 5 minutes since the world had almost ended. 5 minutes since Jungkook had pulled Yoongi's unconscious body out of the flames, and 5 minutes since he realized the door had been bolted from the outside. You looked me in the eye that night and promised I could trust you, Jungkook said, his voice lower now, dangerous. So tell me again, was it you? Taehyung's jaw clenched. He looked away, toward the ruined hallway behind them, where paramedics now rushed past bodies and debris. There was something in his eyes, something twisted between guilt and something worse. Fear. Don't ask questions you're not ready to hear the answer to, he said finally. It was then that Jungkook knew. It had always been him. 3 weeks earlier, the world was normal. The band had taken a break from the spotlight after their world tour ended in Tokyo. Management insisted they needed space. Some thought it was just to avoid burnout. But those close enough to them, those who saw the distance growing between Jungkook and Taehyung, knew something had been unraveling for months. Jungkook hadn't spoken of what he saw that night in Kyoto. He buried it deep, in the corners of his mind where bad memories are locked like rusting cages. But Taehyung had started to change. He began disappearing after midnight, receiving encrypted messages on a burner phone none of them knew he had. Jungkook had found him once, standing barefoot in the rain at 3 a.m., staring at a street lamp like it was whispering something only he could hear. What are you running from? Jungkook had asked him back then. Taehyung hadn't answered. And now, in the scorched remains of a luxury hotel in downtown Seoul, surrounded by smoke and ash and sirens, Jungkook wasn't asking anymore. You almost killed Yoongi, he spat, stepping closer. If I hadn't gone back, I didn't know he was in there. Taehyung cut in sharply. The mask slipped for a moment. Regret? Panic? Whatever it was, it flared briefly in his eyes before he buried it again beneath that maddening calm of his. You knew, Jungkook whispered. You knew everything. He turned away, unable to look at him any longer. The memory was still too raw. The lock clicking into place behind them. The way the fire moved like a living thing. The frantic pounding of fists against a door that wouldn't budge. And now, with Yoongi in critical condition, and the truth inching closer to the surface, all Jungkook could feel was a sickness in his chest. Not just from the smoke, but from betrayal. Because it wasn't just a locked door. It was the way Taehyung watched it all unfold. Calm, silent, like he'd known from the start that none of them were meant to get out alive. And if that was true, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was war. You think I planned it? Taehyung's voice cracked, low and hoarse, but there was an undercurrent of something darker resentment. You really believe I'd try to kill one of us? Rain began to fall over the rooftop, slicing through the smoke like needles. Jungkook didn't flinch. His gaze was locked on Taehyung, face pale beneath bruises and soot. Fists clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. I saw you, Taehyung. Don't act like I didn't. His voice rose with every word, a tremor behind the fury. You were smiling when the fire started. You just stood there and watched. I wasn't smiling. You were! Jungkook stepped forward again, inches away now, nose to nose, his voice breaking. I was screaming for help, pounding the door while Yoongi passed out from the smoke, and you just watched us burn. Taehyung didn't move, didn't blink. Only the rain moved, dripping down his eyelashes, soaking his collar, running like tears down his cheeks. I froze, he whispered almost inaudibly. You think you know what you saw, but I froze. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Bullshit! Jungkook snarled. You don't freeze, Taehyung. You calculate. That's who you've become. Always watching. Always waiting. There was silence, then charged, suffocating. And then Taehyung laughed. Not a joyful laugh. It was hollow, bitter, like it had been caged in his chest too long. You want the truth, Jungkook? He said finally, the fire in his eyes replacing the heat of the one they'd escaped. You want the real reason I locked that door? Jungkook's body stiffened. I wasn't trying to hurt Yoongi, Taehyung continued. I was trying to stop you. The rooftop tilted sideways in Jungkook's mind. He took a step back, his heart skipping a beat. What are you talking about? You were the target, Taehyung said, and there was no emotion in his voice now. Just cold fact. You were never supposed to be in that room. You switched at the last second, remember? Management had you in room 412, but you wanted the balcony view, as always. You moved. You got curious, just like always. No, Jungkook said. His voice was barely a whisper. That doesn't make sense. It does if you stop pretending everyone around you is innocent, Taehyung said, almost gently. There's a reason management told us to take a break. There's a reason our security detail tripled this month. Something's been happening behind the scenes, and you've been blind to it. Jungkook tried to process it all, but his brain felt like static. They wanted you gone, Jungkook. Someone paid for that fire. Taehyung looked away again, fists shaking now. I tried to cut it short. I locked the door so whoever it was couldn't finish the job. That doesn't explain anything, Jungkook snapped. Why didn't you tell me? Why hide it? Why let Yoongi almost die? Because I didn't know who to trust, Taehyung said, and this time the pain in his voice was real, raw, like he'd been carrying it for years. I didn't even know if I could trust myself. Jungkook opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time since that night, his anger faltered, replaced by something colder. Fear. Who? He asked. Who paid for it? Taehyung hesitated. That was answer enough. You know, Jungkook whispered. You know who's behind this. And then, without warning, the rooftop door slammed open behind them. Namjoon stood in the frame, chest heaving, face like thunder. Rain glistened on his black jacket. He looked at both of them like he'd been listening the whole time. You need to come downstairs, he said, voice tense. Why? Jungkook asked, still breathless. Namjoon's jaw worked. Yoongi woke up. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and melted plastic. The overhead lights were dimmed, and the only sound in the room was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Yoongi looked fragile, paler than Jungkook had ever seen him. Tubes fed oxygen to his nose, and his left arm was in a sling. Taehyung stayed by the door. Jungkook walked to the bedside. Yoongi's eyes flickered open. Hey, Jungkook said softly. You scared the hell out of us. Yoongi blinked slowly. Then he spoke. Voice, gravel, and ash. Someone was already in the room. Jungkook felt the blood drain from his face. Taehyung stepped forward. What do you mean? He asked quietly. Yoongi coughed, then tried again. Before the fire, I was getting ready to sleep. I heard the door open, thought it was housekeeping. But then someone injected me with something. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Did you see who it was? Jungkook asked, heart hammering. Yoongi's eyes narrowed. No, masked, tall, black gloves. But they whispered something, right before I passed out. Jungkook leaned in. What did they say? Yoongi stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then, he still doesn't know, but he will soon. Silence. Taehyung turned and walked out without a word. Jungkook followed him into the hallway, caught his shoulder. What the hell is going on, Tae? What the fuck is happening to us? Taehyung looked at him. This time, his face was something Jungkook didn't recognize. Wrecked, angry, terrified. You weren't supposed to wake up either, Jungkook, he said, voice barely audible. But since you did, there's something you need to see. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a flash drive. I've been holding on to this for months. I didn't know who I could trust. Not even you. But maybe I'm out of time. Jungkook took it. What's on it? Taehyung leaned in close. The night in Kyoto. The real reason we were sent home. The real reason everything is falling apart. And then he was gone, walking into the rain, disappearing into the city lights. Jungkook stood there, shaking, staring at the tiny flash drive in his palm. Whatever was on it was going to destroy them all. Jungkook sat alone in the dimly lit studio apartment, the city's lights flickering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like broken stars. The flash drive Taehyung had given him hours ago lay untouched on the table, casting a shadow that seemed larger than it should have. He hadn't moved in 30 minutes, not because he was afraid of what he would find, but because he knew. Whatever was on that drive would change everything, not just between him and Taehyung, not just for the group, but for him. He reached for it finally, with hands that weren't quite steady. Slid it into his laptop. The screen blinked to life. One file. Nah name. Nah date. Just a timestamp. Kyoto Cam C7 412 Mav. April 12. Kyoto. The night Jungkook had woken up in the middle of the hotel hallway with no memory of how he got there. The night he'd assumed he had sleepwalked. The night after that strange rooftop conversation with Taehyung that he had written off as a weird dream. He clicked the file. The video was grainy, from a security camera in the hallway outside their suite. Time stamped 2:03 a.m. There Jungkook saw himself. He walked out of the hotel room barefoot, in sweatpants, dazed. Not unusual. He had a history of sleepwalking, especially when under stress. But what happened next sent ice down his spine. A tall man stepped into the frame. Black hoodie, mask, gloves. He didn't just follow Jungkook, he guided him. Placed a hand gently on his back, whispered something into his ear, and Jungkook followed. Like a puppet. The next 10 minutes showed them disappearing down the hallway and then returning. Jungkook was unconscious now, slung over the man's shoulder. The masked figure entered their room again. When he came out, he was no longer wearing the hoodie, just a hotel robe. He walked calmly down the hallway and vanished into the stairwell. Jungkook paused the video. His heart was thudding so loud he could hear it echo. That robe, he recognized it. They were only given those robes on the executive floors, and they had only been on the 3rd floor. Whoever that man was, he had come from above. There was more footage. Taehyung must have spliced it together. Jungkook skipped forward. This time it was audio. A secret phone recording. A conversation. He recognized the voice instantly. We agreed he'd be off the record by April. I don't care how much he's worth to the fans. Jungkook's digging too close. The other voice filtered, robotic. We're handling it. Not fast enough. I saw him near the back office yesterday. He found the finance logs, didn't he? Partial logs. He doesn't understand them yet. He will. And if he connects the dots to the Tokyo accounts, then he disappears. Jungkook's stomach twisted. His hand hovered over the pause key. He knew that first voice. It was their manager, Hyunsu, the man who had trained with them, cried with them, defended them publicly, and been with the company since the beginning. Jungkook shut the laptop, pushed it away like it was diseased. The room was suddenly too small, the air too thick. He couldn't breathe. His phone buzzed. A message from Taehyung. They know you have the drive. That was all it said. No hello, no explanation. The second buzz came 2 seconds later. Run. Jungkook bolted upright just as the power in the apartment died. Everything went black. Then a knock at the door. Not loud. Calm. Deliberate. He moved silently to the kitchen. Grabbed the knife from the drawer not because he knew how to use it, but because he had to do something. The door creaked open on its own. No one there. Only an envelope, lying on the floor. His name written across it in red ink. He picked it up, heart pounding, hands slick. Inside was a single photograph of him, standing on the rooftop during the fire taken from a drone's eye view. And beneath it, a note. Stop digging, or the next fire won't miss. The next hours were a blur. Jungkook moved through the city like a fugitive. Hoodie up, mask on. No phone, he had tossed it into the Han River after the 3rd time it glitched and buzzed with location tracking alerts. He finally reached the only place he could think of, Taehyung's apartment. He banged on the door until his knuckles split. Taehyung opened it. Shirt half buttoned, eyes red. What the hell did you get me into? Jungkook snarled, shoving past him. They tried to kill me. Again. Taehyung locked the door behind them, drew the curtains. He didn't speak for a moment. I warned you not to look. You gave me the drive, because I knew you would anyway. Jungkook turned to him, something hot behind his eyes. They were going to erase me, Tae. You knew about Hyunsu. You knew about the black accounts. Why didn't you tell all of us? Because not all of us would survive the fallout, Taehyung snapped. You think Jin doesn't know? Or Jimin? We've all known pieces. But putting them together, that's a death sentence. Jungkook slumped against the wall, suddenly exhausted. So what now? We run? We hide? Taehyung shook his head. We go public. Jungkook laughed bitterly. They'll spin it. They'll call us crazy. Or drugged. Or dead. That's why we don't just go to the press, Taehyung said, pulling out a tablet from a locked drawer. We go live. We upload everything. Every file, every recording. We burn the whole machine down before they can bury us. There was a silence then. The kind of silence that happens before something irreversible. And then Jungkook nodded. Let's burn it all. As they began preparing the upload, copying files, tracing digital trails and wiping back doors, Jungkook's hands didn't tremble anymore. The fear was gone. Only purpose remained. They wouldn't go quietly, and the world wasn't ready for what they were about to see. The countdown timer on Taehyung's screen blinked in red. 0, 1, 40, 3. 1 minute and 43 seconds until everything they knew, the company, the contracts, the carefully curated lies, was out in the open. The room was silent, except for the low hum of servers overheating from the data dump they were about to unleash. Files, videos, audio, bank statements, medical records, surveillance footage, all bundled and encrypted into one unstoppable storm, scheduled to auto-upload to 5 cloud backups and stream directly to a live stream that had already been teased anonymously to millions. Jungkook sat beside Taehyung, arms crossed, eyes locked on the screen like it was the edge of a cliff. I still can't believe you kept this for so long, he muttered. I didn't want to break us, Taehyung replied, eyes heavy. But maybe we were already broken, Jungkook scoffed. You think any of this was ever real? Parts of it were. Which parts? The parts where we bled, Taehyung said quietly. Where we survived things no one outside those walls will ever understand. The parts where we protected each other. Jungkook didn't answer. There was too much between them now, years of silence, of buried resentment and pain wrapped in loyalty. There had been love there once. Maybe not romantic, but something just as violent. Something sacred. The timer ticked down. 0, 0, 37. A chime. Jungkook's phone lit up. Unknown number. One line of text. If you do this, Jimin doesn't make it out. His breath caught. He turned to Taehyung. They have Jimin. Taehyung's jaw tightened. Where? No answer. Just static. Jungkook grabbed the phone, typing back furiously. What do you want? The reply came instantly. Don't press send. Don't upload the files. Or you'll lose him. Another message came through seconds later. A photo. Jimin tied to a chair, mouth gagged, eyes swollen. Alive. But barely. The timer hit 0. 0:18. Jungkook lunged for the keyboard. We can't, Tae. We have to stop it. They'll kill him. Taehyung caught his wrist. You don't know that. I saw him. Look. Taehyung stared at the screen, lips pressed tight. Something warred inside him, rage, fear, guilt. 0.12. They're bluffing, he said, trying to convince himself more than Jungkook. You hope they are, but what if they're not? Can you live with that? Silence. 0.10. I've already lost too much, Taehyung whispered. We all have, but if we don't do this now, they win. Again. Jungkook pulled his hand back. 0.5. I'm not willing to trade Jimin's life for the truth, he said. You shouldn't be either. 0.3. Then what? 0.2. Pull the plug. 0.1. Taehyung hit the power button. Everything went dark. The room felt like a tomb. They sat there, breathing hard, soaked in the silence that followed, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Jungkook stood up. We find Jimin. Now. Taehyung nodded slowly. I have an idea. They drove in silence through the sleepless city. Jungkook's mind raced with memories Jimin's last message 3 days ago, where he said he'd been followed after a rehearsal, how he'd joked about it, how no one took it seriously. They pulled into an underground garage 2 blocks away from their old practice building, one that had been under renovation for nearly a year. This place isn't listed anymore, Taehyung said. But the access code still works. I tested it last week. They entered through the back stairwell, descending into the old sub-level bare concrete walls, dust choking the air, the scent of mold and oil thick and familiar. The lights were still on. Jungkook drew the switchblade he'd taken from the glove compartment. He didn't know how to fight with it, but holding something helped. They followed the faint echo of metal against metal, a muffled grunt, and then a voice. Jungkook? Jimin. They found him in a storage room, tied to a rusted chair, his shirt torn, blood dried along his lip and temple. Jungkook rushed forward. Hey, it's me! I've got you! Taehyung stood at the door, eyes scanning the shadows. Jungkook cut through the zip ties. Who did this to you? Are you hurt? Can you walk? They kept asking about the drive, Jimin muttered, dazed. They wanted to know what you knew. Said if I talked, they'd burn down my family's house. Jungkook's heart twisted. Did you see them? Jimin nodded slowly. One of them had a company ID. I recognized the badge. He used to be in our security team. Dongwoo. Taehyung swore under his breath. He was transferred 6 months ago. Disappeared after Japan. Footsteps. Jungkook froze. Voices approaching. 3 of them. Go, Taehyung whispered. I'll stall them. Take Jimin and run. No, I'm not leaving you again. You already did once, Taehyung snapped. Don't make that mistake twice. Jungkook stared at him. Fury and love and desperation all colliding in his chest. And then he nodded. He helped Jimin up, supporting his weight. They slipped out through the maintenance tunnel, the sounds of shouting and struggle echoing behind them. Jungkook didn't look back, but he knew. Taehyung had stayed behind. Again. To protect him. To protect the truth. Even if it killed him. Blood. It was the first thing Jungkook saw when he pushed the door open, dried in streaks along the corridor floor, leading toward the back stairwell. Taehyung's jacket lay there, crumpled and soaked. No sign of him, no trace of his body. Just silence. The kind that screamed. Jimin leaned against the cracked wall behind him, barely able to stand. His face was still bruised, his breathing uneven, but he kept whispering over and over again. We shouldn't have left him! We shouldn't have left him! Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't. The last time he had looked Taehyung in the eye, he hadn't said thank you. He hadn't said I forgive you. He had just run. Now he didn't know if he'd ever get the chance to say anything again. They had gotten out of the underground garage. Barely. Sirens had shown up just minutes after. But no police. No news crews. Just black SUVs with tinted windows and men in suits pretending they were there to investigate a gas leak. It had been 5 hours. 5 hours and still no word. Not from Taehyung. Not from their old label. Not from anyone. Jimin had finally fallen asleep on the couch of the safe house. Namjoon arranged an old studio that hadn't been used since their trainee days. The lights barely worked. The fridge hummed louder than the air conditioner. The floor creaked with every movement. Jungkook sat on the floor, his laptop open in front of him. The upload sequence from earlier still stared back at him. Frozen at 0, 0, 1. Taehyung had killed it just in time. But the servers still had everything. The truth was still a button away. He stared at it. For a long, long time. Then, a knock. Not on the door. On the window. Jungkook stood slowly, grabbing the same switchblade from before. He pulled the curtain back. It was Hoseok. Alone. Soaked in rain. Eyes wild. Jungkook opened the door. Hoseok pushed inside without a word. Is it true? He demanded. His voice was rough. Urgent. Everything Taehyung said. The files. The recordings. The company's been covering it all? Jungkook stared at him. How do you know? I saw Taehyung. Before he disappeared. You what? He found me. Hoseok's hands were shaking. Showed up at my hotel. Told me to go dark. Said they'd come for me next if I didn't leave immediately. I didn't believe him. Thought he was just being paranoid. Until I got back to my room that night and saw it had been cleaned. My clothes. My laptop. My passport. Gone? Burned? Everything. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then he's still alive. Barely, Hoseok said. They're not trying to kill him, Jungkook. Not yet. They need him. He knows too much. But once they get what they want... Jungkook sat down again, his hands balled into fists on his knees. Then we don't wait anymore. Hoseok's eyes narrowed. You're uploading the files. I'm not letting them silence him. And Jimin? He'll be protected. By who? Jungkook met his eyes. By us. Hoseok sat down next to him, exhaling shakily. If we do this, there's no turning back. There never was. Jungkook pressed the button. This time, he didn't hesitate. The screen lit up. Uploading. Estimated time, 2 minutes. He looked at Hoseok. Tell me everything he said. And Hoseok did. Taehyung had told him about the Kyoto incident in full, how the company had secretly signed deals with an international investor group tied to criminal organizations, how Jungkook's popularity had made him both an asset and a liability, how his quiet investigations into discrepancies in the tour's finances had put him on a kill list. But the worst part wasn't that Taehyung had known, it was that he had been involved. At the start, he told me he took the money, Hoseok said quietly. The first year, when it was just surveillance, just reports, just testing loyalty, he thought he was protecting us, that they'd back off if he cooperated. Jungkook closed his eyes. That's why he could never look me in the face. He didn't realize what he was part of until Kyoto, Hoseok continued. That's when he found out about the death orders. That's when he started pulling back, started collecting evidence. He was trying to atone, Hoseok nodded. And now he's probably being tortured for it. The upload hit 100%. The screen went white, then black. Then the live stream launched. The footage began to play unedited, raw, brutal. Surveillance clips, secret audio, stamped emails, and in the center of it all, Taehyung's voice, narrating, calm, steady, like he knew this would be the last time the world heard him. If you're watching this, I'm already gone. Jungkook's breath caught. Taehyung's voice filled the room, echoed through the speakers, through millions of screens across the world as the live stream spread like wildfire. I betrayed people I loved to protect them. I chose silence when I should have screamed. But now I scream, because I have nothing left to lose. And if they come for me, let them. I'm done running. Jimin stirred awake on the couch, eyes wide. Hoseok's lips parted in disbelief. Jungkook stared at the screen, frozen. Taehyung was speaking directly to them, not as an idol, not as a traitor, but as a brother who had chosen fire over fear. And then the screen went black again. No logo, no credits, just one line. Wherever they buried me, dig. Jungkook stood up slowly. His pulse was a war drum now. They think he's dead, but he's not, Hoseok said, standing beside him. No, Jungkook said, grabbing his jacket. He left us a trail. Then where do we start? Jungkook turned to them, jaw clenched. Kyoto, because whatever began there had never ended. And he wasn't leaving without Taehyung. The plane touched down just before sunrise. Kyoto lay wrapped in a haze of pale blue mist, the city's temples and rooftops blinking awake beneath a quiet, deceptive calm. Jungkook stood at the airport window, hoodie up, cap low, watching the mountains stretch like broken teeth against the horizon. He hadn't slept. Neither had Hoseok. Jimin stayed behind, safe, protected by Namjoon and Yoongi, who had gone off the grid completely since the livestream went viral. The world was in chaos now. Social media exploded with theories. News anchors stumbled through segments, and press releases from their former label were riddled with denial and panic. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Taehyung. Somewhere out there, he was alive. Jungkook could feel it in his bones. He didn't care what the world believed. Taehyung hadn't left that message as a goodbye. It was a map, a warning, a desperate breadcrumb trail buried beneath pain and silence. Hoseok nudged his arm. We move fast. We move quiet. I have a contact who still works at the hotel from last year. He's scared, but he owes me. Jungkook didn't respond. He was already moving. Kyoto Grand Imperial Hotel looked exactly the same, polished marble lobby, scent of expensive cologne in the air, concierge smiles carved in glass. No one would ever suspect this was the place where Jungkook was almost erased. The contact was waiting by the service elevator. A young man in a bellhop uniform, barely older than 20. He couldn't look either of them in the eyes. You said you wanted security logs from April last year, he whispered in Japanese. I pulled what I could, but the original files were deleted. What's left is corrupted, or scrambled. Who scrambled them? Hoseok asked. The boy hesitated. They said it was a system update, but it only affected your floor. And the sublevel. Jungkook's skin prickled. The sublevel doesn't exist on the blueprint. It's not for guests, the boy replied. It was used for special VIP clients, off-the-book stuff, private rooms, private staff, some say even surgical procedures. Surgical? Medical staff came and went, but never through the front. The boy handed over a USB. This is all I could get. You didn't get it from me. He disappeared down the hallway before they could ask more. Hoseok plugged the USB into his tablet as they moved through the back corridors. Files blinked open partial blueprints, CCTV timestamps, access logs with half the data blacked out. Jungkook's eyes locked on a series of logs marked Sub-Block 3, Restricted. 5 entries, all within a 2-hour window. One of them was tagged with Taehyung's name. Jungkook's chest tightened. He was here. They found the entrance behind a false wall near the laundry room. An old freight door disguised with shelves and cleaning supplies. Hoseok punched in a code. The panel buzzed, then unlocked. Inside was darkness. Not the kind that comes from lack of light, but the kind that clings. They stepped down a concrete stairwell, lit only by flickering emergency bulbs. The air grew colder, damper. The silence grew heavier. Taehyung! Jungkook called. His voice echoed down the corridor. Tae, it's me! No answer, but then faint static. Hoseok froze, tilted his head. Did you hear that? Jungkook nodded. They followed the noise deeper, door after door, until they reached one with a smear of blood on the handle. Hoseok kicked it open. The room inside looked like a clinic. A rusted gurney, metal trays, restraints on the walls, and on the far corner, a camera. Still blinking red. Jungkook crossed the room and pulled the power. They were filming him. Then they saw it. A message scratched into the wall with what looked like a broken mirror shard. 418. Find her. Jungkook stepped back. What the hell is 418? Could be a room, a code, a date. Hoseok's eyes darkened. Or a person. Jungkook stared at the wall, fists trembling. He left it for us. Whatever it is, it's the key. Suddenly, the overhead lights died. Emergency sirens began to wail. Red lights flashed. Then footsteps. Lots of them. Jungkook grabbed a scalpel from the tray. Hoseok picked up a rusted IV stand. Voices rang out in Japanese. Commands. They were being hunted. Jungkook turned to Hoseok, breathing hard. We split up. They can't take us both. You find a way out. I'll lead them off. Not a chance. Hoseok, I'm not leaving you, Jungkook. Another voice rang out. English this time. Step out, both of you. This doesn't have to end badly. Jungkook recognized the voice. Manager Hyun-soo. He stepped into view, calm, in a crisp, black suit, like this was a boardroom meeting instead of a kidnapping. You're making a mistake, Hyun-soo said. Taehyung's dead. He died trying to expose things he didn't understand. Don't throw your life away following his ghost. Jungkook stepped forward. If he's dead, why are you still chasing us? Hyun-soo smiled faintly. Because ghosts leave footprints. Jungkook's blade was trembling in his hand. He was ready to lunge. But then, from behind Hyun-soo, a scream. Not of pain, of rage. Hyun-soo turned too late. A figure tackled him from behind, slamming him to the floor. Blood, shouting, chaos. And then Jungkook saw him. Taehyung, alive, bruised, cut, his face nearly unrecognizable, but alive. He stood over Hyun-soo, panting, fists red. Should have killed me when you had the chance, he growled. Hyun-soo groaned, spitting blood. I still can. Not today. Jungkook rushed forward, catching Taehyung as he staggered. Tae, he whispered. I told you, Taehyung said, weakly smiling. I'd scream when I had nothing left to lose. Behind them, the compound lights exploded. Backup was coming. Too many. They had only seconds. Taehyung reached into his pocket. Another USB. This is the rest, he said. The names, the money, the files that were never supposed to be copied. Finish it. Jungkook grabbed it. I'm not leaving without you. I'll be right behind you. No more lies. Taehyung's smile faded. I promise. They ran. Together this time. No more separations. And as they emerged into the light of Kyoto's dawn, the city still asleep, Jungkook knew this wasn't over. But for the first time, they weren't just victims. They were the storm. And the world was about to burn. Rain hammered against the windows of the hideout like a war drum, turning the city outside into a blur of neon streaks and shadowed figures. Jungkook stood over the desk, palms pressed flat against the table, eyes locked on the files Taehyung had just given him. His heart was a riot in his chest. Taehyung sat on the couch behind him, blood still drying along his temple. Hoseok hovered nearby, pacing the room like a trapped animal. No one spoke. Not yet. Not since the door had locked and the three of them were safe for now. Jungkook finally broke the silence. His voice was low, flat. These names, they're not just company executives. Taehyung didn't look up. No, they're not. They're idols, actors, judges, sponsors, government officials. Some of them I know. We know. I told you, Taehyung said, rubbing his swollen knuckles. This goes higher than anyone wants to believe. This isn't just about silencing artists. It's about controlling everything they touch. The music, the press, the culture. Jungkook turned, fury flashing in his eyes. And we've been standing on that stage for them. Singing their songs, feeding their pockets, every single night. I tried to protect you from that truth, Taehyung said. No. Jungkook snapped. You tried to control it. You lied. You kept this buried until they almost killed me. Until they almost killed Jimin. His voice cracked and he shoved the chair out of the way. You don't get to call that protection. Taehyung looked up finally. Tired, bruised, but calm. You're right. Jungkook's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't the words that stunned him, it was the way Taehyung said them. Quietly. Honestly. Like someone who had already accepted the weight of what he'd done. I was scared, Taehyung continued. I thought I could outplay them. That if I gave them just enough, fed them lies, delayed the truth, I could keep the group safe. Keep you safe. But I was wrong. Every deal I made only pulled us deeper. I should have burned it all from the beginning. Why didn't you? Hoseok asked suddenly, voice sharp. Why wait until we had nothing left? Taehyung's face hardened. Because I was still waiting for permission to stop pretending this dream was worth it. No one said anything after that. Jungkook turned back to the files. Thousands of documents, contracts, email threads, financial reports, internal memos, each piece fitting into a picture of systematic manipulation, exploitation, and psychological warfare. Artists bought and broken. News outlets paid off. Scandals orchestrated and silenced. He tapped one name on the screen. CEO Min Sang-ho. Taehyung's eyes darkened. The real puppet master. Hyun-soo was just a handler. Min's the architect. And he's untouchable, Hoseok said. He has friends in parliament, police, Interpol. You think uploading files is going to stop him? No, Jungkook said. But we're not just uploading anymore. He looked at Taehyung. You said there's video of the underground clinic, the surgeries, the threats, the mind control tests. You said you saw it. I did. But they scrubbed most of it. I only saved one recording. Play it. Taehyung hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a second drive, much smaller than the one before. His fingers shook slightly as he handed it over. Jungkook plugged it in. The screen flickered. A room appeared sterile, white, full of medical equipment. A teenage boy sat strapped to a chair, eyes wide, tears streaming. Electrodes covered his head. Two men stood over him. One was Hyun-soo. The other was Min Sang-ho. This isn't punishment, Min's voice echoed coldly. This is obedience training. If he resists, increase the frequency. The boy screamed. His name was muted, redacted in the file. But Jungkook felt sick to his stomach. He recognized the look. That glassy stare. He'd seen it in too many eyes backstage over the years. Too many broken souls pretending they were okay. The video ended. Silence crashed into the room. We leak this, Hoseok said. They'll come at us with everything. Lawsuits, assassins, smear campaigns. They'll say we fabricated it. They'll destroy our families. Let them, Jungkook said. I'd rather be hunted than be complicit one more day. Taehyung looked at him then. Really looked. For the first time since the fire, since the rooftop, since everything fell apart. You've changed, he said. No, Jungkook replied. I finally see clearly. They spent the next 10 hours building the leak. But this time, not to anonymous clouds. Not behind hidden aliases. They went public. Facefront. Names attached. Jungkook recorded the video himself, staring directly into the camera. No stylists, no lighting, just him, raw and furious. If you've ever danced to our music, watched our videos, bought a ticket, screamed our names, he began, You have a right to know the truth. We weren't just entertainers. We were prisoners. We still are. He laid it all out. Not just the files, but the story behind them. The manipulation, the abuse, the contracts that stole years from them, the punishments that came when they spoke out, the invisible chain that held them hostage to an empire built on silence. I know some of you will say I'm lying, that I'm mentally ill, that I'm making this up because I'm bitter or broken. But ask yourself, why would I destroy the only life I've ever known, unless it was the only way to save it? He ended with one sentence. I'm not afraid anymore. Then they sent it. Everywhere. Social media, news agencies, global watchdogs, fan forums, dark web forums. The storm didn't wait. It hit instantly. First came disbelief, then outrage, then panic. Half the industry denied it. The other half stayed silent. But something cracked. Messages poured in. Whistleblowers, former staff, journalists who had been forced off stories, anonymous sources confirming everything. Even former idols started speaking out. And then, in the middle of the night, Jungkook's phone buzzed. One message. You need to get out. Now. They're coming for you. No name. Just a photo. Of the front of their building. With a red laser dot pointed at the window. The next second, the window exploded. The explosion shattered glass like rainfall made of razors. Jungkook hit the floor before his mind could catch up with what was happening. The world tilted sideways, smoke filled the air, dust choking every breath, and the high-pitched screech in his ears drowned out the screaming. He crawled toward the couch. Taehyung, Hoseok. I'm here! Hoseok's voice cut through the static. Jungkook turned and saw him pinned behind the metal cabinet, blood trickling from a gash on his cheek. Where's Tae? I don't. Then movement. From under the fallen shelves, Taehyung emerged, coughing hard, face bloodied but eyes burning with life. I'm fine, he rasped. We have to move. They found us. We already knew that, Hoseok shouted. What we didn't know was they'd try to kill us in broad daylight. This was never about subtlety anymore, Taehyung said, grabbing Jungkook's arm and hauling him up. We humiliated them, exposed them. Now they're making an example. Another pop, sharp, muffled. A second shot. The wall behind them exploded into chunks of concrete. They're not sending warnings anymore, Jungkook said, his voice low and shaking. They're sending assassins. No, Taehyung said coldly. They're sending cowards. They slipped out the back of the building through the emergency stairwell, every step vibrating with sirens and panic. The fire alarm was triggered, which meant chaos, perfect cover. They emerged into a back alley just as a black SUV screeched into view on the other side of the lot. Men in tactical gear jumped out. Their faces weren't masked. They wanted to be seen. Hosea cursed under his breath. We need to split up! No, Jungkook said. Last time we split up, you both almost died. Yeah, well this time we all might die, Hoseok snapped. Unless someone draws fire. I'll do it, Taehyung said before anyone else could speak. No. Don't argue with me, Jungkook. His voice was sharp, final. I've already been on the inside. I know the routes. I know how they move. I can lose them. You can't. Jungkook grabbed his wrist. I'm not letting you disappear again. Taehyung looked at him, and for a split second, the storm in his face cracked. Beneath all the pain, the rage, the weight of everything, they were still there. The kids they used to be, the bond that had never really broken. Then trust me enough to come back, he said. Now run. He bolted toward the opposite end of the alley. Shots rang out immediately. Jungkook and Hoseok ran in the other direction, weaving through trash bins and crates, bursting onto the main road and diving into a passing delivery truck. The driver screamed. Hoseok flashed a fake badge. Official business. Drive. Now. The truck screeched into traffic. Jungkook stared out the back window, heart threatening to explode. He couldn't see Taehyung anymore, but he didn't see a body either, which meant there was still hope. Hours later, they were holed up in a hidden studio apartment used by backup dancers during tour seasons. Jungkook sat at the table, head in his hands, while Hoseok watched the news. It was everywhere. The live stream, the files, the explosion. The media didn't know how to cover it. Some called them whistleblowers. Some called them traitors. One outlet outright suggested Jungkook had faked the footage for attention. But the comments told the truth. Millions of people were listening, and someone else was watching. A message appeared on the secure line Taehyung had set up. No sender, no subject, just an attachment. Jungkook clicked it. It was surveillance footage from inside the old underground facility. The video showed Taehyung limping, bleeding, cornered by two men with weapons. He held a pen in one hand, something clutched in the other. Then he stabbed himself in the leg. The men panicked, moved toward him. He smiled, whispered something. Then everything went dark. Jungkook stared at the screen. What the hell was that? Hoseok froze. Play that last 5 seconds again. They did. Over and over. It wasn't just a pen. It was a data injector. And what he whispered? Backup begins. Now. Hoseok leaned back, stunned. He uploaded something else. Somewhere deeper, buried behind the files. Jungkook's phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Yoongi. First message in days. Check the metaverse logs. IP tagged KTH. Black box. Jungkook's eyes widened. Taehyung's not just trying to expose the truth. Hoseok raised an eyebrow. What then? Jungkook's voice was steady. Fierce. He's trying to collapse the whole system. The next 36 hours were chaos. More idols came forward. Former staff members began leaking private contracts. A famed entertainment lawyer announced he was quitting the industry. The government announced an investigation. But then, the backlash hit. Companies began erasing artists from digital platforms. Album covers disappeared. Tour videos removed. Even Jungkook's own voice was auto-muted in some places. They weren't just silencing them. They were erasing them from history. Jungkook stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Exhausted, furious, heartbroken. He picked up the camera. Started recording again. I see what you're doing, he said into the lens. And I'm not afraid. You can delete our names, our songs, our faces. But you can't delete what you did. The world knows now. You think you're still in control, but we're the ones holding the matches. You gave us the fire. We're just choosing where to light it. He hit send. And then his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to. He picked up. There was silence. Then a voice. Weak, broken, but real. Jungkook? He stopped breathing. Tae? I don't have long. I'm not safe, but I have the full list. Every account, every name, even the ones at the top. Where are you? I'll come to you. No, Taehyung said. They're listening. Always listening. Then what do I do? Taehyung hesitated. Go to Busan, he said. Find the girl in room 418. She knows what they did to me. The line went dead. Jungkook dropped the phone. And in the distance, through the open window, another shot rang out. But this time, it wasn't a warning. The train to Busan left at 6 a.m. The station was nearly empty, aside from the occasional security guard and half-asleep students returning home for Chuseok. Jungkook kept his hood pulled low and his mask on tight, backpack pressed against his chest like a shield. Hoseok sat beside him, headphones in, but his eyes never stopped scanning the car. Neither of them had spoken since the call. The name, Room 418, pulsed like a migraine behind Jungkook's eyes. Over and over. What did Taehyung mean? Who was the girl? What did she know that made her dangerous enough to be hidden like a ghost? The train slid through the dark countryside, and somewhere between Seoul and the edge of the sea, Jungkook fell asleep. He woke to the sound of sirens. Not outside, in his dream. Taehyung was screaming his name again, like he had in the fire. Only this time, when Jungkook reached out, he grabbed nothing but ash. By the time they reached Busan, the sun was just beginning to stain the sky pink. They didn't check into a hotel, didn't call anyone. They went straight to the address Taehyung had whispered, an abandoned medical facility near the port, long since gutted and bought by a real estate shell company with no real name. Hoseok cut through the chain-link gate with bolt cutters. Jungkook pulled out the flashlight. Inside, the air was thick with dust and seawater. Rusted equipment. Graffiti on the walls. Silence. Room 418, Jungkook whispered. The halls stretched like a maze. It was on the 4th floor where the smell changed faintly, sterile, like bleach and something older, like trauma. They found it. The door was metal, bolted, but there was light inside. Jungkook knocked. Silence. He knocked again. I'm not here to hurt you. Taehyung sent me. A pause. Then a click. The door opened just a few inches. A single eye peered out from behind the chain lock. Prove it, a voice whispered. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He said you know what they did to him. Another pause. Then the chain slid off. The door opened. She looked no older than 20. Pale. Thin. Her hair was uneven, like she'd cut it herself in the dark. But her eyes were hollowed out by something far older than fear. She stepped aside. Close the door. They entered. The room was cluttered. Papers, old laptops, Polaroids, medical files. On the wall were printed screenshots, names, diagrams, evidence. She watched them carefully, then sat cross-legged on the floor. You're Jeon Jungkook. Yes, you're on the kill list. Jungkook's stomach turned. And you are? My name doesn't matter anymore, but I was once Subject 7. He blinked. From the footage. Yes. She opened a file, pulled out a picture. So was Taehyung, Subject 2. He didn't tell you that part, did he? Jungkook froze. Hoseok stepped forward. What do you mean? They didn't just blackmail Taehyung, she said. They made him. They pulled him apart and put him back together again. Hypnosis, chemical obedience trials, memory redirection. Then they put him back on stage and watched the ratings rise. That's not possible, Jungkook said, but his voice was weak. She handed him a file. Taehyung's name was at the top, stamped across the front. Property of Omega Division, K and Experimental Branch. They didn't expect him to wake up from it, she said. But he did, and once he remembered who he was, what they did, he started looking for the rest of us. She pointed to a wall of photos. 6 others, all marked with subject numbers, all crossed out. He found me first, she said. Helped me fake my death. Then he started collecting evidence. Real evidence. The kind you can't ignore. But it wasn't enough. He knew they'd come for him. That's why he created the black box. The metaverse backup? Jungkook asked. Yes. But it's not just data. She reached under the floorboard and pulled out a device. It's a live memory construct. He downloaded parts of himself into it. Thoughts, memories, conversations, clues. It's the only way to finish what he started. Jungkook reached for the device. Why didn't he tell me? Because you were the final key. He stared at her. She smiled faintly. He loved you too much to use you, until he had no choice. Jungkook couldn't breathe. Hoseok sat down slowly, rubbing his face. So what now? She looked at the wall, at a map with one point circled in red, a private island just off the coast of Jeju. Final extraction point, she said. That's where they're taking him. That's where they erase people. Jungkook stood. I'm going after him. You'll die, she said. Maybe, he replied, but I won't let him die alone. I'm coming too, Hoseok said. She stood, reached into her coat, and pulled out a small chip. Take this. When you see him, put it in the port behind his ear. It'll activate the black box override. If he's still in there, this will bring him back. Jungkook nodded. Then she looked at him one last time. You'll only get one shot. He turned toward the door. I only need one. They left as the sun began to rise, the sea glowing gold in the distance. Somewhere out there, on an island designed to erase memory and silence truth, Taehyung was waiting. And this time, Jungkook wasn't coming to save him. He was coming to finish the war they started. Waves crashed against the side of the speedboat as the island came into view, fog clinging to its cliffs like a shroud, the outline of a compound barely visible through the morning mist. Jungkook gripped the edge of the boat, the salt spray stinging his face, hair whipped back by the wind. Every second felt stretched, suspended between adrenaline and dread. Hoseok sat beside him, silent, eyes locked on the growing silhouette of the facility. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. They reached the cove beneath the southern cliff, an old emergency access dock, unguarded, hidden beneath overgrowth and decay. According to the files, the island had once been used as a psychological rehab center under a different name. Now it was something else entirely. They scaled the rocks in silence, weapons hidden under jackets. The chip given by Subject 7 tucked in a waterproof pouch against Jungkook's chest. The entrance was sealed. But Taehyung had anticipated that. Jungkook remembered the words carved into the wall of the clinic. 418. Find her. And now he knew why. The girl had given them the passcode, a phrase only Taehyung would use as a backdoor into the system. He typed it in. When the fire comes, don't run. The lock released with a hiss. Inside, the hallways were dim, metallic, humming with unseen machinery. Cold, clinical, unmarked doors on both sides, the smell of sterile chemicals riding the air like ghosts. They moved quickly, checking rooms, turning corners. Nothing. No guards. No staff. Too quiet, Hoseok muttered. They want us to find him, Jungkook said. They're watching us. And then, finally, they reached it. A chamber near the center of the facility. Reinforced, locked behind layers of digital clearance. But the door was open. Inside was a single chair. And Taehyung. His wrists were bound. Electrodes attached to his head. Monitors blinked in soft blue patterns, pulsing with faint neural signals. Jungkook ran to him. Tae, no response. He was breathing, eyes half open, but empty. They've started the disassociation, Hoseok said quietly. He's conscious, but not him. Jungkook pulled the chip from his pouch. His hands were trembling. We do this now. He found the small port behind Taehyung's left ear, slid the chip in. The monitor surged. Taehyung gasped. His whole body jolted. Jungkook stepped back. Come on. Come back. You're in there. I know you're in there. The lights flickered. Taehyung's breathing changed. Became shallow, then uneven, then rapid. His head dropped, then lifted, and he whispered, Jungkook. Jungkook's breath caught. Yeah, I'm here. Taehyung's voice cracked. You shouldn't have come. Too late for that, Hoseok said, watching the monitors. Neural override is holding, but not for long. This place, it's eating him from the inside. Taehyung's fingers twitched. He looked up slowly. They didn't want files. They wanted me. My mind, the data I stored, the voices I heard, the people I found. You got out, Jungkook said. You survived it. That means we finish it. Taehyung shook his head. No, you don't understand. The black box isn't just memories. It's live. It's connected to every server they built, every name I stored, every conversation. If we can trigger the failsafe from within, we wipe their system. All of it. Then let's do it. No, Taehyung said. It has to be me. You trigger it from outside. I stay here. Not happening, Jungkook snapped. I didn't come here to lose you again. Taehyung smiled weakly. You came here to end this. Alarms blared overhead. Door slammers shoot. They were out of time. I'm already gone, Kook, Taehyung whispered. I've been gone since the night they took me in Kyoto. But this is the only way I matter again. Jungkook's eyes filled. Don't do this. Please. Promise me, Taehyung said, his voice trembling. When it's over, you'll sing again. Jungkook shook his head. No, not without you. Yes, without me. For me, you have to remind them what truth sounds like. Taehyung reached out. Their fingers touched. And then the doors opened. Armed men flooded in. Guns raised. But before they could fire, Taehyung slammed his hand against the neural trigger. The monitors exploded in white light. The room erupted. Screams. Static. A blinding surge of energy. And then, silence. Nothing. When Jungkook opened his eyes, the facility was dark. Dead. Hoseok helped him to his feet. They stumbled toward the exit. Toward the sea. No one chased them. No one could. Because the system was gone. Every server. Every file. Every blackmail chain. Every mind control experiment. Every ghost they ever created wiped from existence. And Taehyung with it. A funeral was impossible. There was no body, no confirmation, just smoke over the sea, and a silence that didn't end. But 3 days later, a package arrived at Jungkook's apartment. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, a video. Taehyung's face, tired but peaceful. I knew I'd never get to say goodbye. Not really. But if you're seeing this, then I won. We won. They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt anyone. Not like they hurt me. So sing, Jungkook. Not for the fans. Not for the cameras. Sing for the boys we used to be. Sing for the fire. Sing for the truth. The screen went black. Jungkook sat there for hours. And then, finally, he picked up his guitar. His fingers trembled, but his voice did not. And the first words he sang weren't his. They were Taehyung's. The final lyric of a song never released. A lullaby for a revolution. If I burn in silence, let my ashes scream the truth. The world never forgot that line again. And neither did he. It had been 312 days since the firestorm ended. No longer a scandal. No longer a trending topic. No longer a war. The entertainment world rebuilt itself as if nothing had happened. New faces, new stars, new carefully written scripts. Old wounds were rebranded as learning opportunities. CEOs who had vanished suddenly reappeared at awards shows, smiling beside government officials who had once sworn to investigate them. The system had collapsed briefly, but it had also learned how to survive. And yet, something had changed. Under the surface, beneath the plastic and pageantry, something refused to die. Jungkook stepped onto the small stage in Tokyo, the crowd of 200 silent as he adjusted the mic. No fireworks, no dancers, just him, a single spotlight, and a guitar slung across his back. His first official public appearance in nearly a year. No press release, no comeback. Just a whispered invitation that had spread like wildfire. No one even knew the name of the event. The poster simply read, "Tonight, we remember." He looked different, older, not in age but in soul. He wore black but not in mourning. In declaration, he strummed once, and the room held its breath. "Before I sing," he said into the mic, "I need to tell you something." His voice was quiet, raw. "You were lied to, not just about us, about everything. You were fed stories dressed in glitter, and you believed them because they made you feel less alone. And I get that. I needed them too. But behind the scenes, there were rooms with no doors, contracts soaked in silence, people who disappeared. The audience didn't blink. No one moved. One of them was the person I loved the most," he said, voice breaking on the edge. "He gave everything to protect the rest of us. Everything, including himself." A girl in the front row covered her mouth, tears running silently. Jungkook looked up, eyes blazing. "You want to know the truth? The truth is, I failed him. I failed to save him. And I live with that. Every day." It took a long breath, but I also remember him, not as a symbol, not as a victim, as a fighter, as a genius, as the only person who ever looked me in the eyes and told me to stop pretending I was fine. He turned his face slightly. The spotlight caught the glint of the pendant around his neck, a small metal chip, encased in glass. The remains of the black box. He told me once that if he burned in silence, his ashes would scream the truth. A beat of silence. Then Jungkook stepped back, and he sang, not a hit single, not a chart topper. He sang Taehyung's song, the unreleased one, the one they had written together at 3 a.m. in a Tokyo hotel room, both half drunk on insomnia and grief. It began softly, like a lullaby, but it grew, verse by verse, note by note. It became something else, a rebellion, not of fists, but of memory. Every lyric carved through the air like a blade. I watched you drown in the silence I created. I watched you smile while they calibrated. Your every breath, your every fear, and I said nothing, because I was too near. By the time the final chorus arrived, half the room was crying. Jungkook's voice cracked, but he didn't stop. He let it break, let it fall apart, let it bleed. When it ended, he said nothing, just bowed, and left the stage. Backstage, Hoseok was waiting. He hadn't performed. He didn't need to. He'd already done his part, gathered the footage, protected the whistleblowers, testified anonymously. "You good?" he asked. Jungkook nodded. "No, but I'm not lying about it anymore." Hoseok smiled. "You sounded like him tonight. I wasn't trying to." "I know. That's why you did." Jungkook looked down at the chip. "The rest of the black box is still out there. We only used half of it. There's more. Messages, triggers, fail-safes, maps. You want to find it?" "No," Jungkook said. "I want the world to find it. Not for revenge, for proof." Hoseok leaned back. "You know what they'll do if you release the rest, right?" Jungkook met his gaze. "Let them try again." Later that night, alone in a rented room overlooking the Tokyo skyline, Jungkook sat by the window. The lights below flickered like the neurons of a sleeping world. He pulled out his laptop, opened a secure server, uploaded the rest of the black box. No warning, No countdown. Just a file labeled, Kim Taehyung was here, and in the final folder, a single audio message. Taehyung's voice, still alive inside the machine. I'm not asking you to mourn me. I'm asking you to make sure no one ever forgets what happened. I'm asking you to be louder than my silence, to love without permission, to live without apology. And if they come for you again, tell them this. A long pause, then softly, I left the door unlocked. Jungkook closed his eyes and smiled, not because it was over, but because it never would be. And that was the point. Because revolution don't end. They echo forever.